Namaste. In the previous class, we looked at the reactions of haloalkanes. We started off with the first type called as nucleophilic substitution. We said nucleophilic substitution is a reaction where the halogen of the alkyl halide goes out. In place of the halogen, a nucleophile comes in. Somebody who is having an excess of electrons, who is negatively charged, which likes positively charged centers, comes in place of the halogen. Now, we said this reaction can happen in two ways with respect to the mechanism, SN2 and SN1. We looked at what SN2 is all about. SN2 was nothing but nucleophilic substitution bimolecular. This was the mechanism. We said the attack happens from the back side, it does not happen from the front side due to the halogen that is present there and also steric hindrance. We said there's a transition state that is formed as shown. A transition state is a state which resembles both the reactant as well as the product, but not completely. This is formed for a few fraction of seconds, and post that we get the final compound. We also looked at the various points under discussion, the definition, the rate equation, the steps involved, the order of reactivity of halides, strength of the nucleophile, solvent used, products obtained, and stereochemistry of the product. Said the product is inverted, and this inversion is called as Walden inversion. So this was the point of our discussion in the previous class. Today, we will focus solely on the other mechanism. Now, which is the second mechanism? Yes, the second mechanism is SN1 mechanism. Now, SN1, as the name itself indicates, SN2 was nucleophilic substitution bimolecular. Bi means two. So, therefore, what should SN1 be? Yes, SN1 will be nucleophilic substitution unimolecular. Clear? So we will try to look at the features and steps of SN1 mechanism. All right? Yeah, so here you go. So this is SN1 mechanism. Now, as you can clearly see, SN1 mechanism is composed of two steps, step 1 and step 2. Unlike SN2, SN2 was a single step mechanism via a transition state. We don't consider the transition state as a product, hence it is not the first step. Whereas when I look at SN1 mechanism, it is actually composed of two steps. So let us look at the two steps. In the first step, who's this? This is an alkyl halide. Clear? So an alkyl halide, what is it getting converted to? Observe. From the alkyl halide, the halogen is going out with the bond. Here the halogen breaks with the carbon atom, and it takes away both the electrons of that bond to go out as Br minus. Br minus indicates that it has taken away the electrons of that bond. Now, because this bond is broken and the electrons have been taken away by bromine, what will happen to the carbon? Naturally, the carbon is not happy. Why is it not happy? Because its valency is not satisfied. It has lost electrons. So what does this species become? This becomes a carbocation. What does this become? It becomes a carbocation. Now, who is a carbocation? A carbocation is an ion where carbon has a positive charge. You can clearly see the carbon here has a positive charge. Such a species is called as a carbocation. This is the first step. And this step I can call it as formation of a carbocation. So what can I call the first step? Formation of carbocation. And this step is a slow step. Here, when I look at how fast or how slow this step actually happens, this step is a slow step. And a slow step in a mechanism which involves multiple steps is called as the rate determining step, which is what is mentioned here. So if I have a reaction which follows series of steps, or a mechanism which follows series of steps or more than one step, the step that is the slowest will be called as the rate determining step. Clear? Now you will understand this better when you do chemical kinetics. When the chapter on chemical kinetics is taught to you, you'll understand what is actually meant by rate determining step. As the name itself indicates, this step determines the rate of the reaction. This step does what? It determines the rate of the reaction, or how fast or how slow is the entire mechanism is dependent on that particular step which is slow. Hence, this step is called as what? Rate determining step. Clear? So, in the first step, the halogen goes out. How is it going out? It is going out with the bond. Since it is going out with the bond, it goes out as the halide ion, and the corresponding species that is obtained is a carbocation. Clear? So this is the first step. We call this as formation of carbocation. Now what's happening in the second step? Now we know that the carbocation is unstable. This carbocation here is unstable. Why is it unstable? Because it is having a positive charge there, a deficiency. In the second step, I have my nucleophile. This is my nucleophile. This nucleophile will attack the positively charged carbon. This nucleophile will attack the positively charged carbon atom to form the product. Clear? Fine. So this is the second step. So I can call the second step as attack of nucleophile. I can call the second step as what? Attack of the nucleophile to form the product. So SN1 mechanism, unlike SN2, involves two steps. Which are the two steps? First step is formation of a carbocation. How is a carbocation formed? Upon removal of the halogen. Now, how does the halogen go out? It goes out with the bond with the pair of electrons has a halide ion. The moment it goes out as a halide ion, what is the other species that is obtained? The other species is a carbocation. Hence, the first step is called as a formation of carbocation. And we said that this step is a slow step. Any slow step in a mechanism is called as, or the slowest step in the mechanism is called as the rate determining step, which means this step determines the rate of the reaction. How fast or how slow this mechanism will proceed depends upon the rate determining step. So once the carbocation is formed, in the second step, to this carbocation, a nucleophile will attack. So nucleophile attacks the carbocation to form the product in the second step. So this step is called as attack of the nucleophile. And this step is relatively a faster step. Clear? Compared to the previous step, this step is a fast step. So therefore, this is not the rate determining step. First step is the rate determining step. This is called as SN1 mechanism. Now you can clearly see that there are slight differences between SN1 and SN2 just by looking at the slide. Now can you figure out the differences? SN2 was a single step process. Clear? Whereas SN1 is a two-step process. There you just had one step. Because it was just a one step via a transition state, you did not have the slow step or the fast step. Whereas here, since you have two steps, you have the slow step and the fast step as well. Therefore, you will have the rate determining step. So this is the first difference. Can you tell me what is the other difference? What is the type of attack? Correct. There in SN2, the nucleophile attacked from which side? Yes, it attacked from the back side. Why did it have to attack from the backside? Why can't it attack from the front? Yes, we spoke about it. Because when it is trying to attack from the front, there is the halogen that is already bonded to the carbon. Halogen is also negatively charged. The nucleophile is also negatively charged, so there is repulsion. At the same time, there is steric hindrance. The halogen that is bonded is bulky. The nucleophile coming in is also bulky, so it cannot attack from the side of the halogen. So what does it do? It attacks from all the way behind, or the back side, or the opposite side of the halogen. That's what happened in SN2. Now what do you see here in SN1? Yes, in SN1, the halogen is removed in the first step itself. So there is no attack of nucleophile simultaneously. The halogen is already gone out. So what about the nucleophile? Can it attack from the front side? Yes, it can. It can attack from the front side. Now what do I mean by the front side? The side where the halogen was bonded. So nucleophile can attack from the front side as well. Clear? So that is one more difference that you can straight away see. Now, what should be the strength of the nucleophile here? In the previous case, we said the nucleophile had to be what? Strong. Correct. In SN2, the nucleophile had to be strong. Why should it be strong? Because it should accomplish two tasks. Which are the two tasks? One, to attack the carbon, at the same time drive away the halogen. Now, if it has to drive away the halogen, what should its nature be? Yes, it should be stronger than the halogen. Only if it is stronger than the halogen can it drive away the halogen. Clear? Hence, the nucleophile that was required in SN2 is strong. Whereas, what about SN1? Should the nucleophile be strong? Think about it, look at the mechanism. Correct. Nucleophile need not be strong. It can be a weak nucleophile also. Now, why can it be a weak nucleophile? Because the nucleophile does not have to remove the halogen. Can you see that? The halogen is already removed in the first step. All the nucleophile has to do is just to attack the carbon. And for it to attack the carbon, it should have a charge. That's all. It should have a negative charge, or it should have excess of electrons with which it can form a bond with carbon. That is what is required. It need not drive away the halogen, unlike SN2. So this is one more clear difference that you can see between SN1 and SN2. Yes, very good. Now we said in SN2, what kind of solvents are used? Yes, non-polar solvents were used. Whereas here, in this mechanism, I need a polar solvent. Now, why do you think you need a polar solvent? You need a polar solvent because there are ions. And since ions are there, they need to be stabilized. For stabilization of ions, we need a polar solvent. Clear? So these are some of the differences that you can clearly see. Now, I want you to understand one more concept. Now, I want you to listen to this carefully. In SN2, the product that was obtained was inverted in nature. The product that was obtained was what? Inverted in nature. We saw why inversion happens. We called that inversion also by a name, Walden inversion. Clear? Now, observe this. In this case, what is the nature of the product? Observe. Now, when I look at the product here, have the positions of these groups changed compared to the reactant? No. So if this was the position before, after, it is the same position. In the previous case in SN2, the nucleophile attacked from the back side. Hence, it was attached to the carbon on the opposite side of the halogen. Whereas, look at what's happening in SN1. If bromine was bonded to the carbon as shown in the diagram here, where is the nucleophile also bonded to the carbon? It is bonded to the same position, which means the nucleophile takes the same position as bromine, unlike the case with SN2. In SN2, the nucleophile takes the position opposite to that of the halogen in the starting compound. Got that? So we call that as inversion. So what is this called? This is called retention. What is this called? Retention or retain. The structure is retained. The position of the nucleophile is retained as that of the halogen. That's what it means. Retention means there is no change in the position of the nucleophile as in comparison with the halogen. Clear? But this is where a small twist comes. In SN1, both retention and inversion is seen, and it is seen in 50-50%. Let me repeat. Here, the moment when you look at this mechanism here in the second step, you can see clearly that OH minus is attacking from the front side, and it is retention. The positions have not changed. But I am again telling you now that in the case of SN1, retention also happens, inversion too happens, which means I get the other product also. So I will have the second product too here. Now, how will the second product be? I'll have the halogen, carbon, OH, and the three groups which are here. Which are the three groups? CH3, CH3, CH3. This product is also obtained here, and here you can clearly see there is inversion because the position of the groups have changed and the nucleophile has come and attacked the position that is opposite to where the halogen was. And what is the ratio I told you? 50%, which means 50% of this product is formed and 50% of this product is formed. I want you to think, why does this happen? Now, as the reaction here shows, it is clearly front side attack. Correct? Clearly, the OH minus is attacking from the front. If OH minus is attacking from the front, I should only be getting one product, which is this, and this should have been 100%. But surprisingly, you get the other product also, the inverted product also, and assuming the percentage if it is less, but that's also not the case. Percentage is also 50%, which means equal probability of both of these happening. Clear? I want you to think, why is this so? What makes both front side attack and back side attack possible? If the front side attack happens, I get the retained product. If the back side attack happens, I get the inverted product, which means the nucleophile is attacking both from the front and from the back side. Here it's attacking both from the front side as well as the back side. And what is the ratio? 50-50. Equal percentage of both front and back. Why is it so? I want you to think for a moment. Able to figure out anything? Why does both front side attack as well as back side attack happen in SN1, giving rise to inverted product as well as retained product? Okay, let me give you the answer. We said that the attack of the nucleophile can either be from the front side or it can be from the back side. It can either be from the front or it can be from the back side. This happens because, observe, the carbocation that is formed in the first step is planar in nature. What is the nature of the carbocation? It is planar. Now, what do we mean by planar? Planar means two dimension. It can be expressed on on two planes. Sorry, on a single given plane with two dimensions. What about the starting compound? Now, this starting compound is three-dimensional. Clear? This will form a tetrahedral structure. Now, whatever compound that we have written here, the haloalkane, it's tetrahedral in nature, which means it is a three-dimensional. Whereas the ion that is formed the moment the halogen goes out, the carbocation, it is planar in nature. It means I can assume this to be like a book. Clear? Now, when I have a book, assume that this carbocation is a book, it will have two sides to it, the front side and the back side. The nucleophile can easily attack any side because there is no steric hindrance, there is no disturbance that is being caused. The nucleophile attacks both the front side and the back side because the carbocation that is obtained is planar in nature. Because the carbocation is planar, because the attack can happen at both the front side as well as the back side with equal measure 50-50%, you get 50% of the retained product or retention product and 50% of the inverted product. So you get a mixture here. Yeah, so you get a mixture of 50% of inverted product and 50% of retained product. Clear? Is it clear now? Is the confusion clear? All right, super. Now, with this understanding, let's look at the various points that we saw in SN2 with respect to SN1. First one, definition. SN1 straightforward is what? Nucleophilic substitution unimolecular. One means uni, so nucleophilic substitution unimolecular. The second point was rate equation. Now, this is a first order reaction, clear, where the R rate is equal to concentration of only one compound, which is Rx. Whereas, what did we see in SN2? If I quickly go back to SN2, rate was dependent upon both alkyl halide as well as nucleophile. Clear? This is SN2. You see both Rx and nucleophile here, concentration. This is what is determining the rate, which is R. Whereas what's happening here? The rate is only dependent upon what? Only dependent upon alkyl halide. Since the rate is dependent on only one molecule, and that is an alkyl halide, we call this is as unimolecular. You got that? Now, why is the rate dependent on only Rx? Because the first step is the rate determining step, RDS, and it's the slowest step. In the first step, there is only one reactant, which is Rx. Can you observe this? In the first step, which is the rate determining step, how many reactants are there? There's only one reactant. And which reactant is that? That is Rx. Hence, the rate is not going to be dependent on nucleophile. It is only going to be dependent on the alkyl halide because in the rate determining step, there is only one starting compound, which is the alkyl halide. Whereas in SN2, in you look at the rate here, rate will be dependent upon the nucleophile as well as the alkyl halide. Clear? Because both are there in this reaction. Hence, we called it as nucleophilic substitution bimolecular, and the rate was dependent on alkyl halide as well as the nucleophile. Whereas in SN1, the rate is only dependent upon the alkyl halide, hence rate is equal to K into concentration of Rx. Clear? Hence, it is unimolecular. Steps involved? Yes, unlike SN2, here, how many steps are involved? Two steps. Clear? So there are two steps that are involved. First step is formation of carbocation. Second step is attack of the nucleophile. Coming to the order of reactivity of halides. Now, what was the order that we saw in SN1? CH3X was more reactive than primary, which was more reactive than secondary, which was in turn more reactive than tertiary. In SN1, it is exactly the opposite of that. So, who's most reactive here? Tertiary is most reactive. So tertiary is more reactive, followed by secondary, followed by primary, followed by CH3X. Now, why is this order seen? This order is seen because does this mechanism involve formation of carbocation? Yes, of course. The first step involves formation of a carbocation. Clear? Yes? Now, if the first step involves the formation of a carbocation, naturally, we will look at the stability of the carbocation. Tertiary carbocation is the most stable as indicated by this order. Tertiary carbocation is most stable, followed by whom? Followed by secondary, followed by primary, followed by CH3 plus. Since tertiary carbocation is most stable, it will be easily formed. Hence, the order of reactivity of alkyl halides follows this order. Tertiary more, more reactive than secondary, more reactive than primary, more reactive than CH3X. It's because of the stability of the carbocation. Then strength of the nucleophile. We already spoke about this. Even a weak nucleophile is enough for carrying out SN1. Why? Because it involves only one task, and which task is that? To attack the carbon. Whereas in the previous case in SN2, the nucleophile had two tasks. One is to attack the carbon, and two is to drive out the halogen that is there. Here, whereas here it involves only one task, which is attacking the carbon. Hence, a weak nucleophile is sufficient to carry out the mechanism. Solvent used has to be polar since there are ions. Clear? Since there are ions in this mechanism, we need to stabilize that, and the solvent that stabilizes ions is a polar solvent. Products obtained: two products. Clear? As we just discussed, both retained product as well as inverted product. And we said why that is formed. That's because planar carbocation is obtained, and the carbocation, since it is planar, can help in attack from both the sides equally, both the front side as well as the back side equally. Clear? Whereas in the case of SN2, there was only one product, and that product is inverted in nature. And coming to the stereochemistry of the product, there it was inversion. Here it is both inverted as well as retained. Clear? Inverted and retained. A racemic mixture is formed if we start with a chiral alkyl halide. A racemic mixture is formed with a chiral alkyl halide. Clear? Now, what is meant by racemic mixture? What is meant by chiral alkyl halide? This is a discussion that we will have in the class tomorrow, in the next class. Clear? But right now, just remember this. In the next class, we'll try to look at what is meant by a chiral compound, what is meant by a racemic mixture, why in SN1 I get a racemic mixture. Right now, just remember this. So, stereochemistry of the products, both inverted as well as retained. Clear? So you can clearly see the difference between SN2 and SN1. Now, if I have primary, secondary, and tertiary, if I ask them to undergo SN1 or SN2, who will they undergo? It's very clear that we saw the order. The order of reactivity in SN2 was what? Primary was more reactive than secondary, was more reactive than tertiary. The order of reactivity of SN1 was what? Tertiary is more reactive than secondary, which is more in turn more reactive than primary. So who will undergo SN1, who will undergo SN2 if that question is asked? It is pretty straightforward. If it is tertiary, clear, if it is tertiary, it will only undergo SN1. It will not undergo SN2. Clear? If it is primary, it will only undergo SN2 and not undergo SN1. Clear? Got that? Yes? Whereas if I look at secondary, something which is in the middle, it will undergo both SN2 and SN1. It will undergo what? Both SN2 and SN1. So this slide gives you a better picture as to who will undergo SN1, who will undergo SN2, and who will undergo both. So tertiary will always undergo SN1 only. It will not undergo SN2. Primary will only undergo SN2. It will not undergo SN1. Whereas a secondary will undergo both SN2 and SN1 mechanisms. Clear? All right. So I want you to take a homework. Of course, the first homework is SN1 mechanism. I want you to write SN1 mechanism 3 times. Clear? So write SN1 mechanism 3 times. The second homework, differentiate between SN1 and SN2. Second homework is what? Differentiate between SN1 and SN2. Now, what do I mean by differentiate between SN1 and SN2? Write the differences between SN1 and SN2. So far, we have already come across differences. I want you to make a table, make a list of differences between SN1 and SN2. So that is the homework for today's class. So 2 homeworks given. SN1 mechanism, I want you to write it 3 times. And the second homework, I want you to differentiate between SN1 and SN2. Write it in the form of a table. Clear? So we will stop here in today's class. We will continue with the differences and what is meant by racemic mixture and chiral carbon in the next class. Clear? Thank you. Practice, very important. What I taught in yesterday's class and what I've taught in today's class, very, very, very important. One of these two, what was taught yesterday and today, will surely come in your exam, will come. And I gave you a percentage also, 250% it will come, which means very, very, very important. So practice the mechanism such that it will be easy for you to write the mechanism anytime. Write the differences, write the homework. We will again meet tomorrow. Namaste. Thank you.